Hi, I'm Dr. Jeff Nickel, and in case we've never met, I'm a veterinarian. And after a long career in general medicine treating internal diseases like, well, pneumonia, vomiting, heart disease, endocrine problems, hit by cars and other emergencies, I just sort of connected with my first love. What really motivated me to be a veterinarian when I was 8 years old was the behavior of these creatures. And so, of course, I've done a residency, and now I specialize, and all I see is behavior problems. But a lot of them have internal problems that are influencing the behavior. Well, so I came upon this excellent book, and it's called Mama's Last Hug. It was an interview that Terry Gross of Fresh Air on NPR did with the author Frans de Waal. And I wanted to talk about some of these things in here because it brings to mind and to our consciousness the feelings that other species have, that we share. And so I'd like to actually read some of these things, and I'm also going to use a case I just saw the other day of a family that's teaching their 3-year-old little girl how to be empathic toward a dog that has a behavior problem that many people would consider dangerous, but these people are doing so well with it. So anyway, let me show you this book. I'm going to turn excuse me, Miss America. This is our border collie, Miss America, if you don't know her. This is Gaston, the fuzzy white guy, and right over here, he's out of the camera, but this is Tony, and he'll be back on the table. Anyway, let me show you this book, and I think I can do this. There we go. Let me turn the camera around, and here's the book. It's called Mama's Last Hug by Frans de Waal. There's his name, and there she is, and Mama was a chimpanzee. And okay, let me turn the camera around again. There we go. Okay, so you can see the book now, although everything's a mirror image. Mama is not Mr. Doctor. He's a researcher, a PhD. This is not his mama. This is a chimpanzee. This man has done an enormous amount of research on primates, like chimpanzees, or chimpanzees if you like, which are apes, which, by the way, we are. We are not related very closely to monkeys, but we're very close to other apes like gorillas and chimpanzees and bonobos and that kind of stuff. So I want to just read a little bit of this very first chapter. Oh, Cindy, thank you for showing up. And what I really hope is that other people are going to read this book. You would think that, for my interest, it might be heavy on the research. Well, he cites research, but it is very much written for the layman who really wants to connect with some of these empathic behaviors. So it starts out, and I'm just going to read a little bit of this aloud. 1 month before Mama turned 59 and 2 months before Jan van Hoof's 80th birthday, these two elderly hominids, these are members of the genus Homo, we are Homo sapiens, okay, had an emotional reunion. Mama, emaciated near death, was among the world's oldest zoo chimpanzees. Jan, in his white hair standing out against a bright red jacket, is the biology professor who supervised my dissertation long ago. The two of them had known each other for over 40 years. Curled up in a fetal position in her straw nest, Mama didn't even look up when Jan, who has boldly entered her night cage, approaches with a few friendly grunts. Soft grunts are reassuring. When Mama finally does wake up from her slumber, it takes her a second to realize what's really going on. But then she expresses immense joy at seeing Jan up close and in the flesh. Her face changes into an ecstatic grin, a much more expansive one than is typical of our species. The lips of chimpanzees are incredibly flexible and can be flipped inside out so that we see not only Mama's teeth and gums, but also the inside of her lips. Half of Mama's face is a huge smile while she yelps, a soft, high-pitched sound for moments of high emotion. In this case, the emotion is clearly positive because she reaches for Jan's head while he bends down. She gently strokes his hair and then drapes one of her long arms around his neck to pull him closer. During this embrace, her fingers rhythmically pat the back of his head and neck in a comforting gesture that chimpanzees also use to quiet a whimpering infant. This was typically Mama. She must have sensed Jan's trepidation about invading her domain, and she was letting him know not to worry. She was happy to see him. Well, it turns out Mama really was at the end of her life, and she died just 3 days later. But this old friend of hers, this researcher who was 80 years old, Jan van Hoof, he had to go visit her. And, you know, these people, because chimpanzees are just so much stronger than we are, pound for pound, it's huge. And, of course, they've been known to do serious damage to people, but there was a trust that these two had developed. So let me just read you a couple of other passages here that were so meaningful to me, not just on the basis of animal behavior, but animal emotions and their feelings, because there are many researchers and lots of other folks who are sure of stuff that just ain't so, who poo-poo the idea that these creatures who are so meaningful in our lives, people like you and I, because, well, we wouldn't live without them. Yeah, it's a wonderful book, Cindy, and I would, of course, you can get it on Amazon like everything else. But here's the passage about a philosopher named Plutarch said, "You live with a cripple, you will learn to limp." Similar sympathetic locomotion is known of our pets. Within days after a good friend of mine broke his leg, his dog started dragging her own. In both cases, it was the right leg. The dog's limp lasted for weeks, but vanished miraculously after my friend's cast came off. This is possible only because dogs, like many mammals, are perfectly in tune with the bodies of others. Not only are they great synchronizers, they enjoy it. Some dogs learn to skip nicely along with children jumping rope, while others will follow a human baby through the house, crawling on their bellies exactly in tandem. I have known dogs who've done that. And you know, we don't share a verbal language. We don't share a verbal language with chimpanzees, with dogs, or with cats. But there's body language, and there are shared feelings, which is largely what this book is about. It's heavy on the primates, like chimpanzees, but it mentions lots of other species, not just cats and dogs, but horses and cattle and dolphins as well as others. Many animals, from dogs to rodents, from dolphins to elephants, exhibit comforting behavior even though each species uses its own gestures. In fact, in the same homes where the children were filmed, in this particular study he's mentioning here, the psychologists accidentally discovered that dogs responded to the distressed person as well, putting their heads in their lap or licking their face. More targeted studies subsequently confirmed this behavior. Well, Miss America here, my girl dog Border Collie, this one, she's 12 years old now. She hasn't slowed down a bit. But throughout her life, wherever I am in the house, if I sneeze, she immediately shows up. She'll often put her chin on my thigh and looks up at me. And the communication is very clear. She's just wanting to be sure that I'm okay. And of course, I reassure her that I'm just fine. But I can hardly ever sneeze without her showing up. Now, cats, of course, are a different creature. You know, they're certainly very closely bonded to us, but they have been described in a broad, general way as socially asocial, which, you know, generalizations like that are certainly prone to, you can shoot a lot of holes in them. But the truth is that they are highly capable of social interactions, but it isn't really quite the same. Unlike many species like dogs and humans, for example, when one of us gets sick or hurt, we can cry out to our comrades for help, and other people will help us, and dogs will do the same with other dogs in their groups. So cats don't generally do that. They are different, but they are certainly some emotions that we share with them. Here's another passage that I just wanted to share, a little bit longer. In order to survive, we need to eat, make love, and nurse. I mean, this is about reproduction and passing on our genetic code. Nature has made all these activities pleasurable, so we engage in them easily and voluntarily. Nature has done the same for empathy and mutual help. By making us feel good when we do good, the warm glow, the effect of altruism. Altruism activates one of the most ancient and essential mammalian brain circuits, helping us care for those close to us while building cooperative societies. These are the things that we depend on for survival. By seeking the origin of human altruism in its oldest and most convincing expression, we take the puzzle right out of it. The neural mechanisms behind animal empathy are less known because it's impossible to conduct similar studies on apes, elephants, dolphins, and so on. They don't fit into an ordinary brain scanner, and they won't sit still so they can be tested while awake. Rodents, on the other hand, are used in neuroscience all the time. Here at Emory University, where I work, that's Franz de Waal, James Burkett discovered that prairie voles console each other during stress. These are little rodents that live, in holes in the ground. In this tiny rodent, males and females are attached to each other in what is known as a monogamous pair bond and raise their pups together. Sounds like, My Three Sons or Father Knows Best or Leave It to Beaver. If one mate is upset by anything, the other is affected to an equal degree. This is true if the other was not present during the stressful event. Afterward, the level of cortisol, a stress hormone, in the male's body perfectly matches his mate's, and vice versa, indicating a strong emotional linkage. James further found that mates groom each other more if one of them is stressed, and that this activity calms them down. If the voles are made immune to the effects of oxytocin, that's a real bonding hormone, by the way. Just as an aside, we learned in undergraduate in dairy science, which of course we had to take all that stuff prior to starting veterinary school. We learned that with dairy cows, for example, and dairy farmers have known this for a long, long time, they take a warm, wet washcloth or towel and they wipe down the teats of the cow, and that triggers the release of this hormone, oxytocin, that leads to what's called milk letdown, so that when they milk the cows, the milk is ready to be extracted from the udder. It's the same thing that happens in human mothers. When the baby starts to suckle, that releases this hormone called oxytocin that not only facilitates milk letdown in the human mother, but that's also a whole lot to do with a bonding of mother and infant. Well, when people fall in love and we've got a long-term healthy romantic relationship, simply the act of sex or affection, just physically touching one another, facilitates oxytocin, among other things, and that strengthens the bond. And so here we see these prairie voles, when they share their feelings and they groom each other more because they have, one of them has felt stressed and the other, by virtue of empathy, feels the same feelings, they find that oxytocin is part of this thing. And so when we cuddle our pets, that strengthens the bond, and that's part of the reason that they are happy to have our touch. So if these voles are made immune to the effects of oxytocin, on the other hand, they don't respond to the other's stress, suggesting that oxytocin is critical. This makes vole empathy fundamentally similar to human empathy, also in the brain. Human emotional contagion has been tested the way the voles was by measuring stress hormones. Since the average person fears public speaking more than death, I used to be that way. I got over it by just doing it hundreds of times. Subjects in a study were asked to address an audience. Afterward, all participants were invited to spit in a cup, which allowed scientists to extract a hormone associated with anxiety. And that is salivary cortisol, by the way. And we do that in dogs and horses largely, but also it's been done in cats and other species. They found that with confident speakers, the audience followed every word, feeling relaxed, but with nervous ones, the speaker's discomfort rubbed off on the audience. The hormone levels of speakers and audiences converged the way they did with vole mates. These similarities hint at what biologists call homology, or traits derived from a common ancestor. In the same way that our hands are homologous to primates' hands, the same way has a common evolutionary origin. Empathy seeks information about another and helps us understand their situation, compared with sympathy, which reflects actual concern about the other and a desire to improve the situation. So there's an enormous amount we can learn from other species, and this is just a wonderful book. It's not only full of information that I find not only fascinating, but already opening my mind in my clinical behavior practice with dogs and cats, but it's actually helped me understand other people better, and you know, growth is a good thing. So let me tell you this brief story about this family. They first came to me with their dog, whose name is Riley, about 3 years ago, and they had their first child, and she was an infant. She was only a few months old at the time. And the problem was that Riley had, well, she'd shown aggression towards Charlie, this little girl, short for Charlotte. And they were concerned, but they were so bonded to this dog, and they had a sort of a healthy detachment about it, so that they weren't just freaking out, understandably the way many parents would, but they came to me as a specialist, referred by their general veterinarian, because they hoped that I could make a difference. So after just really fully understanding the history of this dog and observing him and being just picking through the details and evaluating the whole situation, it was clear that this particular dog, and they're not all alike, but this dog was showing a great deal of anxiety and nervousness around this little girl, because it had never really been around kids, which sort of raises the point that you know, all puppies should be exposed to every type of human and every type of other creature in gentle and kind settings, so that they learn that, you know, these other things and these little kids who do funny stuff that we adults don't do are really okay anyway. And so we gradually taught Riley to approach Charlie and sniff her and learn that things were okay. And they reinforced Riley the dog for being calm around that little girl. And they followed my instructions, and the dog did very, very well. Well, they brought Riley back in, and they've come in annually for follow-ups so that we could fine-tune what we're doing. And they came in just the other day, just a couple of days ago, in fact. And obviously they're expecting their second baby. Turns out that little character is going to show up in about 2.5 weeks. And there was a recent event. In fact, Riley, the dog, has done so much better with Charlie, the little girl, that they're no longer even concerned. But they always supervise that dog and that little girl when they're together, which they, as responsible parents, always must do. You never assume anything. Even Lassie can be a problem. And so, you know, if she gets cornered, Lassie could become defensive aggressive. It's one of the biggest concerns we have with dogs and children. They can, frankly, freak out with a little kid. But, you know, things have gone just great with little Charlie. But so here was the wife of this excellent young family, and she was leash walking Riley and minding their own business. And unbeknownst to them, another dog walker had come up behind them. He didn't think it would be a problem. He didn't know that Riley was easily startled by other dogs, which is another behavior problem that this dog, it's pretty serious, and we're working with it, and we're going to add in a gentle leader head halter. But nonetheless, this lady and Riley got suddenly startled, and Riley just spun around and snapped and growled and lunged at the other dog's face, startling the other dog and the other dog owner. And so they came in and said, gee whiz, I mean, how big a problem is this going to be, and what can we do about it? So it gave me an opportunity to help them with getting Riley accustomed to a gentle leader so that they could steer this dog's attention away from another dog and lead him further away and create distance so that his arousal would diminish. But it was another opportunity for me to talk about, okay, we're going to have another infant, and these are the things that we can do. We have a lot of research on pets and children because it's so important. And from purely a practical sense with pet lovers like us, many people just freak out. If they get a growl out of the family dog or cat, they want to get rid of the pet. And that is almost always unnecessary. Needless to say, there are some situations that are potentially dangerous, and the responsibility of a specialist is to parse those apart. But with this dog, of course, they did very, very well. Here's the point of my story, is that just watching this family in my consultation room with Charlie. Well, Brandon, thank you for coming. You'll find this, by the way, on my Facebook page, and you can see the whole thing. But what these people were doing in the exam room with this little girl who is really active and talkative and jumping around and doing unpredictable things which toddlers do. She's only 3 years old. They would remind her as she got near Riley to say, now, Charlie, remember, we're gentle. And when they said it in a very gentle tone. And their empathy for the dog Riley was immediately noticeable in that little girl's affect, her body signaling. I mean, I've raised children, and I've been an adult for most of my life, but I remember childhood, and I deal with a lot of families. And you could see it in this little girl, that she was picking up immediately on her leaders, her parents, and when they said, remember, we're gentle, then she would squat down and allow Riley to come to her. And you could see this connection with them. But you could also see that when she got a little wild, Riley's body signaling showed a level of stress, and he would kind of back away a little bit. And these folks, these adults, had become so attuned to their dog that they were always ready to remind their little girl. Now, you notice what he's doing right now? He's yawning. And remember, we've talked about this, Charlie. When he yawns like this and acts fidgety, that means that Riley is getting a little nervous. And that's when you back away and give him space. And what a wonderful thing for these adults to teach that little girl, so that as she becomes an adult, she will clearly understand empathy. She'll understand it because she has practiced it, and she's learned it from two really good quality people, and she's seen the benefits to another creature. And many people would say, well, yeah, but it's a dog. It's a member of a different species. How could that relate to empathy and being considerate of the feelings of other people? Well, because, all humans are different. We're not all like appliances that rolled off an assembly line. My feelings are my own, and my wife's and children and all of my friends and my clients and my coworkers. I mean, we've all got our own take on things. Well, so do a member of another species. And we can share those things, and we can learn from them. And that little girl is learning wonderful lessons by being considerate of this family dog who has a pretty significant behavior disorder of his own, and she's learning to be kind. And kindness and empathy, I mean, gosh, what better things could we teach our children? Having great scholastic record, I mean, that's a good thing. But the meaning of life is spiritual growth and becoming better at who we are and treating others well. And pets can serve such a valuable function in that. And Riley and little Charlie's life is doing that, not just in spite of his behavioral issues, but in part because of them. And this next child can actually learn not only from the parents, but learn from his or her big sister. So, I'm going to see more of these people, and I find it just so rewarding to watch them do what they do. In fact, I just couldn't help myself but to say, you folks are doing a wonderful job. And I pointed out what they're doing, and, their attitude was, well, thank you, but we already knew that. So anyway, it was just a great thing. So if you like this Facebook Live, maybe you'd put a little comment or just one of those little hearts or one of those other emoticons or a wow or something else, and share it with your friends. Thank you. I'm getting some hearts on the screen. I just love to share these things. And this book by Franz de Waal, Mama's Last Hug, when I mentioned this to my wife, she said, I'd love to read it, but is it going to be sad? And I said, no. It's a wonderful story, not just about Mama, this 59-year-old matriarch of this chimpanzee colony who was such an important figure to the other chimpanzees, but became an important teacher to the researchers. And again, let me show this thing on my, there you go, here it is. Whoops, hit the tripod. There it is. Mama's Last Hug, Animal Emotions and What They Tell Us About Ourselves by Franz de Waal. You'd think with a foreign-sounding name like that, he wouldn't be very good at English, but he's good or better a writer than I am. And he writes so well, and it's so engaging, and you know, it's a page turner. So anybody has any questions or follow-up to any of this stuff, by all means, send me questions on my Facebook page, your comments, anything like that. And if you decide to pick this book up and read it, and you have some thoughts on it, I'd love it if you'd share them with me on Facebook. And, well, shucks, thanks for tuning in. Miss America, Gaston, and Tony's over here on the other table just watching what we're doing right now. I hope everybody has a great evening and a great weekend.